if you're like 30 to 40-year-old senior software engineer or senior academic professional, and you're looking to have kids, and you use me as an example, there's like a very very small subset of you watching that probably who fit that description. But yeah, you should have kids. It's a complex thing for sure. And I'm not at all qualified to raise kids yet by any means. Like I need at least another 15 years to prepare for that. But I do like looking at people's psychology, and I like looking at my own psychology. And I think one of the most important things to address in parenting is how the modern like technological age is affecting it. And I was thinking about this. I think every generation has certain behaviors that are like bad, that are like negative things and vices, and then it has certain behaviors it desires. And that changes pretty dramatically with technology. So like it used to be, you don't want to smoke cigarettes, and you don't want to consume too much weed or too much alcohol. You don't want to get into drugs. You don't want to get into gambling. There are certain things like that, and those are still totally around. But the much bigger issue for your kids is like the internet and all the ways it can psychologically affect you, all the different all the stuff out there, all the information. There's like a ton of it. And I know some people like Steve Jobs, and my parents did this. Yeah, we have similarities. Is like not giving your kids access to the internet until later. And I think I got access to the internet at maybe 10 or 12. I don't exactly remember, but it was kind of late. I remember I had access to video games kind of before the internet. Or maybe it was around the same time. I was like an iPad kid for sure. And I for a long time like looked at the internet and iPad kids and people like binge watching YouTube and consuming all this information and stuff as like completely destructive, negative thing. But there are a lot of people who kind of have thrived in that environment. It's like just a new landscape of information. It's like a new game where there's just so much information being ping-ponged around from different people. And I used to look at like TikTok kids and be like, oh, these guys are just hopeless. Like their brain rotten. It's over. It's hopeless for them. But it's weird. We're like so smart and so like goal driven and so adaptable that I talk to some of those kids and they're not dumb. They're like, I mean, some of them are. Some of them just smoke weed and watch TikTok, and they're just dumb. But for the most part, the people that I've talked to that are on TikTok are like kind of, they've adapted to it in the same way that like our parents' generation, like maybe you smoke cigarettes, but you're like brilliant, like Holden, what's his name, and Codfield in Catcher in the Rye, where he has all these bad habits, but he's like kind of a smart guy. Or I don't know, like, you can look at like Good Will Hunting, he's smoking, like everyone is smoking, everyone drinks. Like there's different kind of negative vices that they're bad, I think, but they're like almost everyone is doing them. It's the social norm to be binge consuming information and playing super addictive video games for hours. And it's just like, will we in the next 50 years be like, that was worse for you than smoking? Probably, for a lot of these things. I think TikTok especially is like, this is just really bad for your attention span because it's all this fragmented information. But it doesn't mean that people can't still have a vice like that and be successful and yeah, have a handle on the world. But the thing is, the difficult thing about parenting, in my mind, is that what those vices are, what those behaviors to avoid are kind of hard to predict. Because, I mean, maybe you can do it, but like say that in the next 50 years, we're like, oh, TikTok was actually terrible for you. So people stop using TikTok. Like people have way cut back on smoking. There's still some smokers, but a lot of people have cut back. The people that understand all the reasons why you shouldn't smoke have cut back. However, what thing 50 years down the line when we're like, okay, TikTok was horrible for the brain, what new technology is really bad for you that we don't recognize yet? It's always this kind of like progression where there's something like just outside of our knowledge of what's bad for you that a generation gets sucked into. And you can look all the way back. People are doing heroin and cocaine for medical reasons, and like all this crazy stuff back in the day that was believed to be beneficial, but we now realize it's just terrible for you. But yeah, parenting a kid in the information age is really quite, I think it's kind of chaotic, because you can be exposed to just any number of like bizarre opinions and stuff on the internet. And that's why I think it's kind of dangerous to just give a kid access to that very early on in their lives, because they could find some like extremist beliefs, or just some kind of degenerate community or something, or degenerate kind of content that you don't want them to see, and that they'll just like, if they're too young, they won't have kind of a framework to live by, and they'll just like consume it all. Thankfully, I don't consider that happened to me, really. Like, I played too many video games probably, but they're engineered to be addictive. And same thing with YouTube. And the internet is just kind of engineered to be addictive. Like, I consider I'm like a normal amount of addicted to it, considering like everyone else around me too. Like, I'm not spending 14 hours a day online or anything, or watching anything super, super degenerate. But yeah, I'm not sure how much of that, what caused me to avoid that trap of falling into like degenerate internet content and being addicted to the internet. I guess I was at certain points, but overall it's like my parents like not giving me the internet for the first 10 years of my life, and like instilling values of like academics and stuff very strongly. Like, I didn't realize at the time that those, I felt like those aren't my values, but now I realize those are my values, which, yeah, I think it's very important to just lead by example. That's what I've found, is you kids will kind of act in the way you want them to act. That's, you're their role model as a parent. And I've tried to find other, well, it's interesting. Yeah, I had this hypothesis, like, am I so academically minded and driven, and like I have to know more, and like I'm so into knowing things and improving things because my parents are like high achieving academics? And so I found a few academics. I was out downtown and I heard people talking about this girl who was like really high achieving. Like, someone was like, oh my God, 500 LinkedIn connections. And I was like, that's nothing. You know nothing about social media. And I wallowed in that superiority of being an influencer for a little bit in my own mind. I obviously wouldn't say that. But then I was like, all right, so this is a very respected person. I'm going to go track her down and see. And she was extremely high achieving as like the president of all these things. And I was like, hey, like, we just talked for a while about like achievement. And I'm like, I have all these things going on too. Like, I talked to these people and I tried these jobs, and I have this YouTube channel where I talk about what I'm trying and whatnot. And she had all these other achievements. I don't want to go into them, but like, all these clubs and organizations and dealing with how the university is run, and shared all these similar insights about certain types of people and like the structure behind everything. And it turned out her parents were also academics. And I found this several times over. Having academic parents is really reflects on the kid. Like, and you don't immediately notice it. Like in high school, it's hard to tell until later in high school how people's trajectories are going off in different directions. But then you give it another 5 years and you really see the different parenting styles have caused and differences in how people see the world. And another really interesting thing I found is there are certain people whose parents like had some kind of big flaw, and like that could be they were kind of neglectful in some way, or they were emotionally shut off. Those are the big two that I've encountered. There's, I'm sure, like 100 other ways to kind of mess up your child. But yeah, like emotionally closeted, families and neglectful families. But the thing is, those people are often kind of forged in fire because of that. Either they like crash and burn and I don't know them because they're like homeless or something, or they're just like insanely driven. Like I know people that have come from nothing and that have all these like horrible stories about, oh, my parents were this and this, and I had to hold all these things together for them from a young age. And those people, like they really adulthood is kind of thrust upon them very early. And it's interesting because you would think that would mess them up, but some of the most successful, high-achieving people I know had kind of neglectful parents as well. Not to say that you should at all roll the dice and be like, if I neglect my child in just the right way, they'll turn out to be cracked. That should not be your goal. First of all, the chances of that are low. And second of all, just I don't know. That's just a really horrible idea for a bunch of reasons. Definitely instill like a love of knowledge in your kid. That's absolutely essential. Have them love learning for themselves. Very, very important point. It's also just weird because the world seems to be changing really fast. And for some reason, this is something that a lot of people often forget, that technology is really advancing incredibly rapidly. It's just like, because we're in the current moment, it feels like if you have a vision of the future where you're like flying cars and all these crazy droids and whatnot, it's like the future isn't here. We've stagnated technically. But I don't think by any means we've stagnated technically. I think advancement is actually going faster than it ever has before. Well, we can actually measure that. A lot of it is just in like really abstract ways now. That's kind of beyond most people's understanding. It's like behind how everything works, like management theory and all the structure of how programs are put together. It's getting so complicated now that it's kind of hard to see how everything is in motion, but we are progressing forward technologically very quickly. And that's probably the biggest challenge of parenting in the information age. Like what technologies will have what effects on your kids, and because I believe in kind of letting your kids run wild. Like the best way to raise kids, I think, is to not control them too much. Even though you may see certain things out in the world as like vices that are really bad, it usually backfires to try to stop kids from doing that. They're going to want to try all the things that the world has to offer. And that may be, like TikTok, you may be really uncomfortable with that, but I don't know, it may be important for kids to try it at some point. And like, I think shielding from a young age is good, but beyond that, you have to just like let your kid run free and discover everything for themselves, and just make sure you watch them carefully so they don't do anything really bad. But yeah, it's important for humans to just have the freedom to run around like young humans and discover things for themselves. And because otherwise you're just like not the same as any of your friends. You're just like, you're basically, if your parents like have their values imprinted on you too hard, it's like you're not moving forward with the rest of society, for better or worse. I don't know if society seems to be getting better. There's some setbacks here and there politically, but yeah, I don't know. That's my 2 cents on parenting. Hopefully you learned something here or there. I'll probably make more videos about parenting as I discover certain things that have led to the way I am, because I like how I turned out. But I don't know. Yeah, I'll catch you next time.